Hi, everyone. Welcome to our virtual fair demo webinar. I think actually some folks were here yesterday. I just want to warn you, it will be the same webinar, but we are glad to see you back again today. Before we get started, I'm going to go through some housekeeping. I'm not going to pause like we usually do and wait for folks to show up just because we have so much to cover today. So, housekeeping. First of all, we will be recording this webinar, and anyone who registered to come to the webinar will receive a recording after the event. Also, we have a web page that has all of our webinar recordings, so just know there will be a recording. Anyone who didn't register but is a colleague of yours, you can just forward the link along and they can check it out as well. You didn't have to have registered to watch. Next up, we're going to have a Q&A section at the end of this webinar, but please don't wait to ask your questions. So in the panel, the control panel that popped up, you can see a question box, and you can just type your questions along the way. We have a small army of handshakers there in the background, and they're going to try to keep up with the questions that come in and answer them as we go. And we'll also say some out loud during our Q&A at the end if they're especially common questions folks are asking. We do ask for a little bit of kindness. Yesterday we received 1,200 questions, so we are doing our best to get to all of them. Some of those questions are really specific about your unique institutional instance, and just keep in mind that if we can't answer that today, these are things that we can get to in subsequent conversations with your relationship manager as well. All right. Oh, this has been coming up quite a bit with GoToWebinar. If you have audio issues and you find that you are not able to hear suddenly, go to that audio panel and toggle between computer audio and phone audio and no audio, and that usually turns it back on. That's a very scientific way of fixing that from us to you. You're welcome to fix GoToWebinar. All right, after this, you will be receiving an email that again contains the recording. I'm seeing questions come in about that. There will be a recording, it'll come in the email. It will also contain information and links to other things that we're referencing, our support model and an email template you can send to your employers and your network. So all that will come in an email following the event. After the webinar, you're going to see a fast survey pop up. We really love to hear your thoughts. It helps us get better. We are asking some information about your fair strategy this year, so please do take a moment and answer those. When they pop up, it'll come up on a browser right after you close this webinar out. And finally, you can use the question box, not to overly prompt you here, but you can also just give us feedback. And we love positive feedback. So all feedback's welcome. Please let us know you can use that question panel. We save all of them and we read them afterwards as well. All right, so let's go to our next slide. So today, speaking to us, we have Christine Cruz Vergara. She is the VP of Higher Education and Student Success at Handshake. Hello, Christine.
Hey, Katie, excited to be here with all of you.
Thank you. Next up, that's me, Catherine or Katie Kelly, Director of Marketing at Handshake. Also joining us today to talk about support is Jordan Pedraza. She's our Director of Support at Handshake. Hi, Jordan.
Hey, Katie, and happy Friday Eve, everyone.
Yes, definitely. And finally, joining us today is Jade Pass. She's our Product Manager, and she's been working really hard on bringing you what you're going to see today. So hello, Jade.
Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here.
Great. So let's go to the agenda. Next slide. Talk about what we are going to talk about in our webinar today. First topic will be pricing. And just to tell you the punchline now, it's free. But we're going to go over that. We get a lot of questions about video usage guidelines. So we're going to talk about that today. We're also going to do a demo. We're going to walk through the experience of a student, what the student will experience at the fair. We're going to walk through the workflows for career centers and employers and setting things up. Then we're going to hear about our support model for virtual fairs. We get a lot of questions about that as well, so that's why we're covering that today. And then we'll get into our Q&A. Now on the next slide, I'm just going to quickly recap what we've done to date, because we've been working on this really hard as a full company priority, primarily since the COVID-19 outbreak, when we knew that we had to quickly pivot and provide something to our partners to accommodate their recruiting this fall. So, we started in May with a lot of research and development with our advisory boards, and then we did an R&D webinar, which I'm sure many of you were on. You are at the webinar today, so that's the third point in. mid-July, and actually hearing feedback maybe even earlier, we're going to be providing a virtual fair launch kit, and that will be a landing page that has support articles, blog posts, promotional materials for students, email templates for employers, all the things that we think you'll need to get this off the ground fast. That'll be coming then. On July 16th, we're going to have an employer registration training webinar. That will be for the employers that are in your network, just for them, hopefully, since we know attendance is limited there, but we have a template for you to invite them to that. It's coming to you after this webinar. We'll be live in late July. And then we have friends in the Big East Consortium who have agreed to partner with us to be our first fair. So we're really excited to be working with them on July 30th. We will provide training webinars for all of our higher ed partners on August 6th and again on August 12th. So you'll look out for the registration for those. And then in August, most of you will be kicking off your career fairs for the year. So let's go to our next slide. I just want to reiterate, and this came up yesterday as well, this might not look like what you expect a virtual fair to look like. And that's because we're not just trying to simulate an in-person event online. There won't be any little people walking around an animated space. Instead, we're just trying to distill the values that we heard during research were the most important to you, to students, and to employers in a virtual fair. And those are creating an efficient experience to drive meaningful connections, setting very clear expectations and offering clear information to reduce stress and avoid repetitive conversations, and different methods of engagement to support all types of students. So that's what you're going to see today. And I actually want to invite Christine. Do you want to say anything about this before I hand it over to you for our use guidelines?
Sure. Yeah, Katie, I think you said that really, really well. I'll actually give you a quick example that I know you'll hear from Jade a little bit more when we get into the demo. But some of you might already be wondering, I actually see a few questions rolling in around smart cues, for example. How are students going to stand in line? What will that look like? How will they be able to mark their place so that they can get back in? Well, as we were thinking about the virtual experience, we realized since it's virtual, you actually don't have to stand in line, right? So that's not something that you actually have to replicate in a virtual environment. In fact, you can actually create a whole new experience where a student can either pre-plan their schedule or they can plan their schedule whenever they happen to hop into the fair and they see the availability. So Jay's going to talk a little bit more about that, but that's just an example of how we're truly not trying to replicate your in-person experience and just slap the word virtual in front of it. We're really trying to rethink what that experience can look like so we can make it better for both students and employers. So thank you, Katie, for making sure that that was really clear for everybody.
No problem. Well, let's hear about, this is really the topic of the hour. So I'm excited for you to cover this.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I know many partners have been asking us, what is it going to cost? We have definitely shared with all of you that for fall 2020, the cost for handshake fairs is going to be free. Jade, if you want to go to the next slide, we can share that information for folks and we'll walk you through what exactly this means. So we know that this is truly an unprecedented time. We know that it's stressful. There's a lot of ambiguity that you're dealing with. There's a lot of ambiguity that all of us are dealing with. And we want to make sure that we're really focused on making sure no school and no student is going to miss out on these virtual engagement opportunities with employers. So for the fall, we are prepared to cover all of your virtual fair costs that essentially match your historic fair usage from your institution from last year and more. I'm going to cover a little bit more detail about what that looks like in the next couple of slides, so just sit tight for a second. But essentially what that means is that we have prepared ourselves to absorb some significant costs on the behalf of our university partners for this year. And all we're asking is that you take some consideration in just making sure that you're using the virtual fair tool for what it's meant to be, for virtual fairs, and not necessarily using the video component for kind of an always on usage, 24/7. I'm just going to leave this on and let students come and do drop-ins all day, for example. So if you go to the next slide, I'll walk you through in more detail what this actually looks like. Okay, so what counts as free? Everything you did last year and more can be done in Handshake virtually for free. There's an email that is coming to you shortly, either tomorrow or on Monday, that will recap all of your fair usage from 2019. If you expect to exceed your historic fair usage in terms of student or employer engagement, not a problem. just let us know and we can work with you. We want to see better engagement for you. You want to see better engagement for you. So we're happy to work with you on that. That's why we're going to be able to cover all of this and more for free for you. We just need to know what that's going to potentially look like or what you're predicting so that we can do our own cost modeling on the back end. If for some reason you did not use Handshake Fairs last year, or you're a new partner with us and you're just joining, we're happy to provide you with a guideline of typical usage based on schools around your enrollment size. So all of that is coming in an email from your relationship manager tomorrow or Monday. Now, I'm going to walk you through an actual example of what this could potentially look like. So Jade, feel free to go to that next slide. All right, so in 2019, this is a real institution, but let's just take Example University, ran 27 career fairs with 350 student attendees and about 65 employers for each. In total, they were able to serve over 9,000 total student attendees. So based on that historic schedule, what schedule can they maintain in Handshake for free for this year? If they wanted to increase to 35 career fairs and have 25% more, no problem. Happy to cover it. We can definitely take on that cost. If they want to double it, right, to 55 fairs, we could probably still cover it, but let's talk. That's a really big increase, and we want to get a better understanding of why you'll be doubling and what the student impact is that you're aiming to achieve there. If you want to do your current fair and 5 new student orientations and 10 student club fairs because other offices have reached out to you, I'm not sure if we'll be able to cover all of that, but we should talk. We can definitely cover all of your costs as career services, but we do need to discuss and really talk through the plans a little bit more for costs that might relate to other offices, okay? And if you're thinking, well, this is pretty sweet, I think I'm going to like what they're showing today, and we would love to be able to use this tool to have 24/7 always on virtual appointments or drop-ins. That is not something that we can currently support. So hopefully that example helps to bring this to life a little bit more of how much value and how much we are able to help cover. And we definitely want to work with you and have those conversations. So in the email that you're going to receive from your relationship manager, you're going to see your historic usage in the past, and there will be a quick form for you to fill out to give us a sense of whether or not you plan on having a pretty similar fall, or if you plan on having a very different fall, and if so, different in what way. And then we'll reach out to you and we'll have a conversation. We'll get you all set up for the fall. If you go to the next slide, we'll talk through some of the best practices and guidelines based on the research that we've done with our students and our employers. So the first is a 3-hour fair as a best practice with a 6-hour limit. So the product will actually limit you to keeping your fair at no more than 6 hours, but we actually recommend that you really hover closer to like the 3 or 4 hour time frame for a virtual fair. This is because, as you all know, it can be quite exhausting to be on virtually all day long. And for a lot of our employers, they're not interested in sitting in a fair that is of significant length. So anything larger than 6 hours for sure, employers have pretty much said, I really don't know that I would even consider signing up for that fair. It's too much of my time, and it's very hard for them to be able to maintain that same level of energy for students in something longer than that. So 3 hours was really sort of what we were hearing from both students and employers. When we looked at some of the historic usage, we're able to see that students at best were staying at in-person fairs somewhere around 2 to 3 hours anyhow. But a significant period of that time was actually meant standing in line. Since we're eliminating the lines and students are able to create their own schedules, both the day of the fair or prior to the fair, it really eliminates their need to be able to be there for that much, for that length of time. So 3 hours is a best practice. Career Center owned, obviously, we're here to support all of your career related needs. If you are thinking about expanding the use of this beyond Career Center fairs, please let us know so that we can discuss that scope of work with you. And then finally, we want to let you know some scheduling limits. We don't have limits on the number of employers that can register. We don't have limits on the number of students that can attend, nothing like that. However, for each fair that you have, each employer will be able to host up to 3 30-minute group sessions. So we just want you to know they will be able to host up to 3 30-minute group sessions, in addition to one-on-one appointments, or essentially one-on-one sessions that they might have with students. The reason this is 3 and the reason it is 30 minutes is so that employers can space out the group sessions over the course of a 3-hour fair to be able to talk with students that might come to the fair at different times. Not all of your students may come to the fair right when it starts. So employers want to be able to have that option to be able to catch students throughout the fair. Each of the group sessions will allow up to 50 participants so that students are able to listen in and have some of those group conversations as well. I won't get into too much detail because Jade's going to talk a lot about that in the demo, but hopefully some of these best practices and guidelines are helpful as you think about also the pricing and what that's going to look like for this year. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Katie, and if we start to see a whole bunch of questions roll in about clarifying anything, we will definitely get to that as well.
Hey, Christine, I already have
Yes.
a clarifying question for you. So we know
Okay,
that
great.
budget, you know, people have, especially this year, especially with COVID, budgets are tight. Budgets don't change mid-year, and there's understandable anxiety about like what happens after fall. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I think we have some good news for folks there as well.
Yes, absolutely. So we recognize that all of you have your fiscal budgets for this year. You've probably either already requested it or you've already received it, so you know what you have for fall and spring. We recognize that. I recognize that. So in terms of cost for the spring, the one option that we are very seriously and actively discussing right now would be an employer service fee. So like 10% or less on whatever it is you typically charge your employers would be something that would likely be able to help us offset some of those costs for the spring semester, so that it's not necessarily money out of your pocket that you would suddenly have to find in terms of funding from your budget. So just to give you a sense, that is something that we are actively discussing. I know some of you on this call are actually the university partners or college partners that have requested or actually submitted that as an idea and as a way that we might be able to help mitigate costs. We really appreciate that suggestion, and it is something that the team is actively discussing right now. We're not able to solidify exactly what that's going to look like for spring until we see at least a month's worth of usage from this fall. We need to see how the virtual fairs are going, how are students engaging, how are employers engaging, what does the video usage pattern look like, and from there we'll be able to have a much better sense. So we're aiming for mid-fall to be able to solidify what spring will look like in terms of cost, and we'll let you all know. But just so you're aware, it is likely to be something related to an employer service fee, 10% or less.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Christine. And hopefully that helps answer a lot of those questions too. So now we are going to ask you some questions. Jade, let's launch the poll. And if you're like me, you're going to maybe get a little bit of a spinning wheel for some of these polls, but I think it should go smoothly. Just don't be afraid if that happens. Okay, here we go. Here's the poll. If you hosted fairs with us last year, do you anticipate serving similar numbers of students this year with virtual fairs? All right, the answers that you can select are yes, no, we'll likely serve fewer students, no, we'll likely serve more students, or I am not sure. Please take a sec and give us your answers so we can help us see kind of what folks are thinking about the year. Part of a lot of this, what you heard from Christine and this poll question and all of these details have to do with the fact that just like you don't really know what the fall will be like, neither do we. We're all kind of working in this new landscape, so this really helps us. All right, I'm going to give you guys some time because I think the slowness of GoToWebinar is, I don't want that to work against us. So I'm going to give you a few more seconds.
Not bad though. We have more than 60% of our attendees have already answered.
Okay, good. All right, so just last few people, put your answers in. And Jade, feel free to close this. All right, here we go. Answers were 40% said similar numbers, 10% said they'd likely serve fewer students, 18% said they'd likely serve more students, 32% said they weren't sure. And you know what? That is very close to like what folks said yesterday. So that's super consistent. And just so you know, about 64% of you voted, and there are about 870 people here. So if you're interested in for the statistics folks in the crowd. All right, let's go to our next poll. One more question for you. If you hosted fairs with us last year, here we go. Okay, have other units or offices on your campus contacted you or expressed interest in using Handshake's virtual fairs? Select one of the following, yes or no. All right, so keep voting. I think, Christine, didn't you think it was interesting that so many schools are anticipating serving more students? I guess I can put myself in the students' shoes and think, you know, I'm especially eager this year to attend something, and if all I have to do is click in from my dorm room or apartment, I might be more interested in going.
Absolutely. I'm excited to see so many people are predicting that they'll be able to serve more students. That's that's fantastic. I look forward to hearing what people's ideas are for how they're going to do that.
Totally. Let's close this poll.
Yep.
And we had 72% of our 870 voted, and 33% said yes, other units have contacted them, and 67% said no. That's good to know. And as we hear interesting use cases, and we'll try to circle back with you guys and let you know in our newsletters and other places what we're learning from your peers. So with that, let's move on to our next section. I want to introduce Jade again. Jade, are you ready to take over with the demo?
Yes, thanks, Katie. Hi again, everyone. I'm going to walk you through the virtual fairs demo, and we'll start by reviewing the student experience, and then we'll move into the career services and employer workflows. So let's start with Anna. She's a junior at Amarante University and is looking for an engineering internship next summer. Let's see what a virtual career fair experience might look like for Anna. First, she gets notified by her Career Center about an upcoming virtual fair and decides to log into Handshake to check it out. Here you can see the new events search page, and we've combined events and fairs to streamline the experience and elevated some of the most common filters to the top of the page. She ultimately decides to click into that Amarante University career fair listed first. And she reviews some of the details entered by her Career Center. But before she decides to register, she probably also wants to check out which employers are attending. Here, you can see her scrolling through the employer list. And before she can actually sign up to meet with these employers, she will need to register. But if an employer stands out on this page, she can follow them to make sure to check out their available sessions once she's registered. She decides to register, and she answers a few questions from her Career Center, like if she's had her resume reviewed, for example. These questions are completely customizable, and they're set in the career fair creation process, just like they are today. After registering, Anna decides to see which employers have sessions that are interesting to her. She sees a one-on-one and group session with Box and adds those to her schedule, which you can see on the right side of the page. With 3 sessions added to her schedule, Anna's feeling ready for the virtual fair. I do want to call out here that students do not need to pre-schedule. They can show up in the day of the fair and build their schedule at that time. On the day of the fair, Anna logs into Handshake, and she notices that IBM has a group session that fits into her schedule. She quickly launches that video call and checks her own audio and video before joining. She learns a little bit about the internship program from Justin, a recruiter on the IBM team, and she's immediately interested. After the presentation, Anna asks a question about the engineering internship program and learns that it's rotational, which is exactly what she's looking for. You can see on the right side of this screen, there are many students typing in questions to the chat box that then this recruiter can answer live. Anna goes on to her other sessions throughout the day, one-on-ones and groups that she's signing up for day of or that she's pre-scheduled. And after she receives a message from Justin encouraging her to apply to the internship program. This is hopefully one of many connections made at a fair like this Amarante University Virtual Fair. And we really wanted to bring to life the full experience in Handshake, from a student searching for a virtual fair all the way to potentially receiving a follow-up from an employer with an existing tool like messaging here. So now we'll move on to the next section. But first we'll talk about a few ways that students and employers can interact, because yesterday we received a lot of questions about all of the different ways that employers and students could interact with one another within the Virtual Fairs tool. So we want to make sure to call out that one-on-one sessions are going to be 10 minutes. And we do think that some chats will be around 5 minutes and some a bit longer, but this is really what we've heard from students and employers as a good standard, and we'll explore other options in the future as we learn more about how students are engaging in virtual fairs. We also want to make sure to call out that students will be able to see availability of one-on-ones and group sessions throughout the day of the fair, and they'll be able to drop in whenever there is space available in their schedule. We've heard that queues aren't a great experience, so this will really allow everyone to spend their time productively. And we will still make sure that there's some day of spontaneity. Katie,
Hey,
Kelly,
Jade.
anything else?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, Jade, I'm going to interrupt you. This is an important thing, and you know, Jade and I had rehearsed this a bit, as you can tell, but we just wanted to really put a punctuation mark on this, because we frankly received a lot of questions about this yesterday on our webinar, and so this is important to note, and this goes back to what Christine said at the start. Some of the concepts that you may be familiar with, like queues or wait lists or walking around or virtually walking around, those aren't going to be a part of this product. What this product is going to do is distill all of the interactions down into their best formats and kind of lose some of those process things that might be familiar to you from an in-person fair. So that's what this slide is really meant to recap. How people will interact in one-on-ones and 30-minute sessions. You can still drop in, you know, scheduling in advance would be great because you could prep, but if you find it that day and you quote drop in, you can join. And there won't be any queues and there won't be any walking around. So hopefully that makes sense. And I don't know if Christine or Jade, before we move on to the next section, if there's anything else that you guys want to add here, just to clarify points for people as questions roll in.
No, I think that's right. Thank you, Katie and Jade, for kind of hammering that piece home. And I just wanted to say, for all of our listeners right now, if there's something that we're talking about that totally excites you and is not a question, feel free to also put that in the chat box. We're happy to take a good sense of what it is that is really resonating with you and what you're excited about as well. That also is very good feedback and helpful for us as we continue to build and iterate.
Great. Yeah, and just keep these ways of interaction in mind as we move on to the next section, where we'll break down the workflows, because these will start to really come to life within those. And with that, we'll move on to the career services and employer workflows that will support the connections, like the example that we just reviewed. I'm going to break this workflow review into 4 sections. First, setup, the creation, registration, and payment process connected to a virtual fair. Then schedule, the schedule creation and sign-up process for students and employers. Third, the day of the fair, the video, audio, and chat connections that are made on the day of the fair. And finally, post-fair, the evaluation, sharing of success, and next steps in the recruiting process. Like I said, we're going to talk about this in 4 steps: setup, schedule, day of fair, and then post-fair. And I'm going to walk you through each user's journey as they move through this virtual fair process. There's no need to memorize all the steps that I'm about to show you, because we'll see examples of these experiences throughout each section. As a career services staff member, most of your workflows will remain the same: creating the fair, coordinating payments and approval, inviting students, moderating for questions, and then reporting on success after the virtual fair. Employers will register for the fair and add their team members in a very similar way that they do today. And during the scheduling phase is really where employers will have the biggest shift in their workflow. They'll create and manage their schedules, and then the day of, join the sessions they've pre-scheduled and meet with students. After the virtual fair, they'll review the students that they spoke with and follow up accordingly. We saw the students' experience before with the example that we talked through with Anna, and their experience really doesn't start until that scheduling phase where they'll register for the fair, sign up for sessions, and then join those sessions. And they'll join sessions on the day of, both pre-scheduled and that they drop into. So like I said, no need to memorize this. We'll just use this as a guide as we walk through all of the 4 steps of the virtual fair. So let's start with setup. As a Career Center, you can now create a virtual fair in Handshake. So if you're planning on running one in the fall, please create it today. If you're planning on facilitating the virtual fair in Handshake, then make sure that you check that the location is virtual and that the host type is in Handshake. Those are the 2 fields that are going to unlock employers' ability to create schedules. So really important, those 2 new fields that you'll have to make sure are set correctly. Virtual fairs that are facilitated in Handshake will be limited to 1 session and 6 hours. And as a best practice, like Christine mentioned, we do recommend 3-hour virtual fairs. You can add multiple virtual fairs if you're planning to run targeted fairs by major or college. So if you're planning on running 3 virtual fairs this fall, then you can create those 3 separate fairs. They can all be up to 6 hours. I want to highlight an improvement for both physical and virtual fairs that's really exciting for me. We'll be launching an employer custom welcome message, and you can use this to send custom messages to employers when you approve their registration. This is one of the most requested product updates for career fairs in general, so we're excited to launch this with some of the other virtual fair updates. We've been getting a lot of questions around multi-school support for virtual fairs, and you will have the option to invite other schools to your virtual fairs. Keep in mind that the school that creates the fair will be responsible for coordinating registration, payments, and approval. And if you plan on inviting other Handshake partner schools, then please coordinate with them ahead of time to make sure that they know that the career fair is going to be approved at their school. It will be auto-approved, just as it is when you invite another school to a physical fair. Setup and registration types will stay custom per school. And here is included an example by company type, which works well for a virtual fair. If you're considering transitioning a fair from physical to virtual, you may want to adjust your registration types to make sure that they make sense in a virtual space. For example, small, medium, and large booths, you might want to transition those to be by company type. Employers will register using the same form that exists today. The only change that you'll see reflected on this screen is that we've changed booth types to registration types, which should make that much clearer to employers who are registering for your virtual fairs. Let's move on to scheduling. Once an employer's registration is approved, they will have the option to create their schedules. And you can see that create schedule option here. They'll add their team members that will be attending the fair. And an important piece here is that the team members attending will have to have Handshake accounts because we need them to log in to launch a Handshake video session. After talking to dozens of employers, we'll be supporting a new role type of representatives, which has a stripped down permissions model so they can add non-recruiters to their account to participate in these virtual fairs. There will be a 15 representative limit on this section, so we want to make sure to call that out. The next step is adding group sessions to the schedule. Group sessions will be 30 minutes, and employers will be limited to 3, as Christine mentioned before. In this example, you can see that if they choose to use Handshake's video support and want the video interaction embedded in Handshake, will support up to 50 students. And if they're hoping to engage with a larger group of students in their group sessions, or they prefer their own video platform, they will have the option to run their group sessions using an external video platform, as you can see here. After adding the group sessions, the registrant can then select which team members will be attending those group sessions as hosts and co-hosts. Then the registrant can add one-on-one schedules for all relevant team members. These one-on-one sessions will be 10 minutes each, and each team member can adjust their schedules when they log into Handshake. Employers will have the opportunity to set preferences on their one-on-one meetings to efficiently use this virtual interaction time. Specifically, employers will be able to qualify students by GPA, work authorization, major, and graduation date. And our product research has shown that one-on-one virtual meetings are far more effective when they're focused, which is likely when these preferences are shared in advance. That said, we also strongly believe in the power of technology to democratize opportunity, so group options will always be available for all students. From there, employers will review their schedules, and relevant team members will log in to claim their schedules. You can see here an invitation that's been sent to one of the team members, letting them know they need to log in and claim their schedule. Here's a view of the created schedule, which you can see can be adjusted. And here's a view of the schedule where students have started to sign up for meetings. You can see that this representative can view the student's profile to help prepare before that one-on-one session. As a Career Center staff member, you will have the opportunity to view employer session information. Here, you can see the representatives with claim schedules over all of the representatives that have been added, the number of group sessions that they plan on hosting, the number of students that have registered for those group sessions, and the number of one-on-one sessions filled over those that were requested. This will really give you insight into which employers might need a reminder that their representatives need to claim their schedule, or which representatives might need to consider expanding and opening up an external link if they're getting close to that, if they're getting close to their limit in terms of group registrations. So we really want to empower you with the right data here on how employers are structuring their sessions. And you're probably also wondering, as a Career Services staff member, can I edit schedules on behalf of employers? And the answer at this time is no. Career Services will not be able to edit schedules on behalf of employers. We'll continue to evaluate that, but we do need the employer to own and claim that schedule so that they know when to show up and how to launch those video sessions. Katie, Kelly, any other questions on scheduling that I can cover before we move on to day of the fair?
Yeah, you know, one question that is coming up a lot is on the why 10 and 30 minutes. Can you just check in on that for folks about why we chose those time periods?
Yeah, in speaking with students and employers, we really landed at 10 minutes for one-on-one sessions as being a good standard. We totally understand that sometimes those conversations are shorter, or sometimes employers might want them to be longer, but we feel that 10 is a good standard to give a little bit of a buffer and still create those personal interactions like that happen when you just walk up to a booth in a physical space. For 30 minutes,
do you mind if I jump in really quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll also just add that when we were talking to employers, most of them were spending on average about 2 to 3 minutes per student when they were in a line queued up. And as they were trying to get through all of those people, they were finding that obviously those conversations were really hit or miss on whether or not it was a valuable conversation, whether or not it was meaningful. We were hearing very similar things from students too, some of whom sort of equated that experience to feeling like cattle and feeling like a number. It was not personal. It did not feel meaningful to them. And so as both of them sort of reflected on what that looked like, they were like, you know, if we do about 10 minutes, it would give us a chance to have a more meaningful conversation, especially if our qualifications happen to match what the employer is looking for or vice versa. But it's not so long that it becomes an awkward period of time where you're almost trying to figure out like, okay, what else should I talk about? What else should I say? in this particular setting. So that was particularly important because initially we had actually debated, should it be 15 minutes long? And should it be a slightly longer period of time? And both employers and students were like, no, it's best to have this initial thing be 10 minutes. The employer can always follow up, message the student, and have an ongoing conversation or set up a longer conversation after the fair. So just wanted to provide that little bit of context there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We've gone back and forth and asked a lot of students and employers what makes sense. We do want it to feel a little bit more casual, not like an interview, so definitely nothing longer than 15 to 30 to 20 minutes. And then for 30 minutes, it's the same idea for group sessions. We want to make sure that employers can offer a few group sessions. So at first we started considering an hour long, but 30 minutes will offer more flexibility in group scheduling so that employers can offer different times for students that might show up throughout the fair. Anything else, Katie, Kelly, there?
No, I just want to be mindful of time because I know we still have quite a bit to go through. So we'll hand it back to you, Jade.
Great. So moving on to the day of the fair. As a career services staff member, we do have a few best practices for the day of the fair. You'll have access to our launch kit, which you can use to send relevant resources to students and employers before the fair. We also recommend linking to the best ways to connect with you on the fair details page for both students and employers that have questions about getting into the virtual fair. Jordan, our Director of Support, is going to talk in just a second about all of the ways that Handshake will be there to support you during a virtual fair, so we'll get to that. Employers on the day of the fair will launch those scheduled sessions from their scheduled view. So here you can see the option to launch that video. Then they'll join their group sessions and one-on-one sessions and test their video and audio settings. You can see that they can choose to turn off their video and just host the session via audio, and then they'll join now when they're ready. Employers will be able to share their screens to present relevant information. And here's a video of Jordan and I in a Handshake video call to close out this day of experience. We had a lot of fun recording this, and this is the two of us chatting in Handshake's video platform. And then after the fair, as a career services user, you'll be able to review session and attendance information at a glance. You'll also be able to report on this information in Handshake Insights and via the quick downloads. Employers will be able to review resumes from all the students that RSVP, and they'll be able to follow up with them via Handshake messages, potentially moving them to the next stage in the recruiting cycle. There are many ways that they may choose to follow up. This is just one example of a current tool that exists in Handshake. And that wraps up the virtual fair experience from setup to scheduling to the day of the post-fair. And we'll go through a couple of recaps now just to make sure that we review some of the most important pieces. So some of our virtual fair guidelines: employers and reps per event. There's no limit on the number of employers that can register for your virtual fairs. There will be 15 reps per schedule that they create. Students per event, there will be no limit. Obviously, students can only sign up for as many one-on-one and group sessions that fit into the time of your virtual fair, but no limit on total number of attendees. Hours per event, we will be limited to 6, and we recommend 3. Group sessions hosted in Handshake's video tool will be able to support up to 50 students. And then the timing of one-on-one slots and group sessions is going to be 10 minutes per one-on-one session and 30 minutes per group session. For video usage, as Christine and Katie Kelly went over in pricing, contact your relationship manager if you feel that your usage this fall will exceed last year. And then to close out the demo, we also want to touch on accessibility, which we got a lot of questions about in yesterday's webinar. So Handshake is committed to building an accessible product, and we're working towards Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.0 A and AA standards for all of our student products. But a few things that are very important for our virtual fair solution are color contrast, which Handshake will support, keyboard-only support, which we will also support, and screen reader support, which we are on track to support for our virtual fair's launch. The one thing that we're determining a solution for currently with our accessibility consultants is closed captioning for video. We'll be working on identifying how we should build out support here, and then we'll share that information with you all as soon as we have it. Anything to add there, Katie, Kelly, or Christine, before we move on to support?
No, nothing from me. And you know what? I think we had some polls queued up, but I'm going to suggest we just skip those for now and move straight to hearing from Jordan to make sure we give her time. So we can cruise past these, and if we have time at the end, we'll get to them. Let's hand it over to Jordan.
Cool. Thank you, Katie and Jade. So to introduce myself again, I'm Jordan Pedraza, and I lead global support, trust and safety, and documentation at Handshake. One of the top questions we've received around virtual fairs this fall, is what support will look like and how we'll keep everyone safe. So let's get right to it. So here's an overview of what everyone will get. I do want to emphasize that at the end of the day, our higher ed partners, so you all, are the hub and heart of Handshake. You've been doing this work before Handshake or any others. You've been bringing our network together and facilitating meaningful connections. And we've heard from you that you prefer to help your employers and students directly, but also work in close tandem with us whenever needed. And we are support partners in our mission in helping employers and students together. So therefore, that's our foundation for virtual fair support. So here's what everyone will get. We are providing day of support only to higher ed and premium employer partners, and you can refer to what is currently in your support package in your Handshake agreement. Higher ed partners and employers will have a day of virtual fair or event option on our contact form. And when that option is selected, we'll see your submission and review it immediately within 30 minutes. Now, students will not receive day of support directly from Handshake, but higher ed partners can report issues on their behalf as needed. Students will have email support as usual, but again, we will not provide day of support to them directly, but higher ed can contact us on their behalf. Lastly, we'll have a virtual launch kit addressing higher ed, employers, and students, and it will consist of lots of resources, email templates, blog posts, videos, and help articles that include checklists, day of support suggestions, and technical requirements in using these features. So to sum up, we're here for you Monday through Friday, 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific time, and higher ed partners and employers will have Handshake support during your events. So now let's talk about some of the other things we're doing so that you can report issues very easily to us. So we're going to have a way for all users to report technical or trust and safety issues directly to the Handshake team. This reporting form will provide a fast and easy way to report any issues, and it will provide key info for us to triage and resolve issues more quickly. We'll also be able to monitor any issues across multiple schools or users if needed. Showing our reporting form in more detail, in any session, you'll be able to report what kind of technical issue came up and add more detail if needed. And then once it's reported, it'll be immediately flagged to our team and we'll follow up within 30 minutes. We'll also use all of these reports to make continuous improvements. Lastly, I want to call out our support scope here. Handshake support can fix Handshake product issues, but we won't be able to assist with non-Handshake areas. So things like your internet connection, your device, your browser, your camera, or microphone. And then sometimes we'll need to work directly with our video and chat provider when there are video, audio, or chat issues. And then talking a little bit more about what we're doing for trust and safety. So in addition to reporting technical issues, we'll have a form to report trust and safety issues from any session directly from Handshake. Participants, which will be students, or hosts, which will be employers, can report any user or message, and that's including the host, for fraudulent, spam, or any other inappropriate activity. When a user or message is reported, the session host will receive a notification. So there's an example on the right there. And then hosts can decide whether to remove that participant from the meeting. And then I wanted to show a mock-up here of our mobile reporting flow as well. So you'll be able to report technical or trust and safety issues on the web or mobile web, or mobile iOS and Android apps. So this is the mobile app view here. And then you're also probably wondering what other trust and safety controls will be in place for virtual fairs. And we've seen this question come up already. So first, as Jade mentioned earlier, all hosts and attendees, so employers and students, will need to have Handshake accounts and be on the participants list. So they need to have had registered or be an attendee to access your fair. So if anyone doesn't have a Handshake account and is not on your attendee list or didn't register, they can't access your fair sessions. And then when it comes to video, participants can turn video on or off at any time, and they can leave sessions at any time. And then hosts, they can also choose to turn their video on or off and then end sessions altogether at any time. Once the host has ended the meeting and the scheduled start time has passed, the meeting can't be restarted. Participants or hosts can't edit participant names in any sessions. And then hosts can mute or remove participants from a session at any time. And then once a participant has been removed, they cannot rejoin. And then lastly, all group and one-on-one sessions will be encrypted via DTLS and SRTP protocols. So I also wanted to mention that one of the core pillars of our virtual support offering this fall is to be proactive. So we're going to be providing proactive resources, documentation, and content to help you and to help you help your employers and students. So as mentioned before, we're putting together a virtual fair launch kit that will consist of lots of things: email templates, blog posts, videos, etc. Our Help Center will also have tons of thorough articles, and that will be ready hopefully at the end of this month, if not early in July. And that will include more details on things like technical requirements, setup and testing workflows, and details on our offerings. And then, of course, more webinars, trainings, and videos are underway for all three sides. I'm actually working closely with our training and education lead, Tiffany, to put together a virtual engagement and day of virtual fair support course for you in particular. But the main thing I want to emphasize here is to be proactive. So plan ahead, test and test again, and fully prepare. And of course, we're here for you every step of the way, and the community is all here for each other. And then I thought it'd be helpful to show what we've been seeing to date. So we're excited to share, we've already seen over 400 virtual fairs created in Handshake. We also know that most are happening around mid to late September, particularly on Tuesdays and Wednesdays from around 9 to 11 a.m. Pacific. So we're already aware of it. We're adjusting our schedule and coverage accordingly, so we'll be ready to help you. And then last fall, back in 2019, we supported up to 30 concurrent career fairs per hour and over 130 fairs per day. So we're ready to handle lots of activity on the network. The last thing I wanted to wrap with is this isn't our first rodeo. This is our 5th back to school this season with our community, and we've learned a ton and have kept iterating on how we deliver a great, compelling experience. We've supported thousands of fairs and employers, hundreds of schools, and millions of students, and we've managed to maintain responsiveness and quality by responding to and addressing issues as quickly as possible. We always aim to keep raising the bar to ensure we're there for you. We'll continue monitoring chat for any questions or thoughts about support and trust and safety, and I look forward to working with all of you this fall. Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan. All right, I'm going to actually launch a couple fast polls to my colleagues on the turntables. Can you please launch the poll that we skipped before? And very quickly, ask some questions of our partners. What is the likelihood you'll use Handshake to support virtual career fairs when the feature is launched? Certain, fairly certain, undecided, likely not, or definitely not. Please put your vote in and we will wrap this poll up. All right. more answers in here. All right, let's shut the poll down. Fabulous. That's great to see. Okay, terrific. And let's launch our last poll. Coming up here, do you plan to host on-campus events in addition to virtual fairs this fall? And let me tell you, we receive this question from employers all the time. Your answers are so appreciated here. They want to know, is your entire strategy going to be on campus or physical? We'd be surprised, but we'd love to hear it. Our strategy will blend virtual and on-campus events. Our strategy will be mostly virtual, a few on-campus events, and our strategy will be entirely virtual. Please let us know. This is a really important one for us and our network, so we appreciate it. All right, now I know that folks are gonna have to drop off soon, so we'll make this a fast one. Let's go ahead and close this poll out and get to the last few questions. All right, as we suspected, largely virtual. So that's great to see. Thank you very much for weighing in on that. And now I want to ask a few quick questions to my team that came in. Here's one about multi-day fairs. We got a lot of those, Jade. Do you want to just quickly speak to our stance on multi-day fairs?
Yeah, right now for a multi-day fair, we recommend that you just create that as separate fairs currently. So instead of creating multiple sessions, just create those virtual fairs as duplicate career fairs, and you can actually duplicate them in the product to make that a bit easier.
Okay, great. Let's see. How about this one? What are the qualifications? Yes. Okay, so Jade, give us an overview of the qualifications for one-on-ones. I know you spoke to that a bit, so tell us a little bit more about that.
The qualifications for one-on-ones will be the same preferences that you see on the job form and across other areas of Handshake. So employers will be able to set those qualifications, and only students who meet those will be able to sign up for one-on-ones. We'll be providing information to career centers and to employers about how their schedules are looking, and we'll make recommendations to remove some of those qualifications if they're not getting the number of signups that we think they should. So we'll be monitoring that very closely, but the qualifications will be the same that you see on the job form: school year, GPA, major, work authorization.
All right, thanks, Jade. Here's another question. There's a lot of questions about kind of what happens on the day of if people don't show up for sessions, and like, can someone else come in? So here's one way to put that. For the group session, once 50 registrants have signed up, can no more register? Well, what if only 25 show up? Multiple people ask that, so interested.
Yeah, we're still working through some of the details here, so we'll be able to share more information in the coming weeks. But right now, if 50 students do register, we will likely then close that group session, and only those students who register will be able to sign up on the day of. If the student is a no-show, we will also track those students that are no-shows to these events so that we can report on that and share that information with career services as well.
Great. And speaking of reporting, we have another question here about that. Will career centers be able to report on the employers connecting with students to either apply for a job or join a one-on-one?
Yes, career services will be able to report on which employers and which students are attending the virtual fairs and how they're engaging, if that's via group sessions, one-on-one sessions. There'll be some robust reporting there available for career services.
All right, I'm going to squeeze one more in because I know it's a quick answer. If I want to invite a non-Handshake school students to our career fair, can those students participate, and how?
This is a great question. And yes, you can invite non-Handshake school students to your virtual fairs. It's the same functionality that exists today for physical fairs, where you would mark the career fair as public, and that will open it up to all students. So you can't invite individual non-Handshake schools to your career fairs in Handshake, but you can open it up to be public, which will then make sure that Handshake Open students have access.
Great, thank you, Jade. And now we're right at the hour. So I want to thank Jade and Jordan and Christine and all the people who showed up today and answered the polls and participated and gave us feedback and asked questions. We anticipate a lot more questions coming in from you guys. So look for more resources from us. Reach out to your relationship manager if you need to. And we look forward to launching these virtual fairs with you in the fall. So thanks for coming, everyone. Have a great day.